Hello, my name is Connor.
I just took a bite of ice. Sorry. Are you leaving that?
That's not your name.
My name is Jason.
And you're listening to the Amazing Perplexed podcast. So, today, I don't know what the exact date is, because if you haven't figured this out and you've listened to all 80 somewhat podcasts Jason and I have done, or even 2 episodes, you'll know that we don't have like our organizational skills. If when we put them on our resumes in the past, it was a complete lie. We were not organizationally minded. So I don't know what day this is going to be coming out, but this will be coming out mid to late May on a Sunday, and this will be the last episode for at least a couple weeks, I'm pretty sure, because Jason, at the point of this release, will be on his sabbatical. His church has been gracious enough to give him the time away to experience what God has for him to experience during this time. And so we're just going to talk about what that looks like, and what his hopes are for it, what the reasoning is for it. And so, yeah, I guess my first question, Jason, is what do you see as a sabbatical? What is it?
Yeah. So a sabbatical is a time that you're not doing what it is you usually do in its simplest form, and specifically for ministers, and why I think it'd be great for everybody to have a sabbatical no matter what they do for a living. One of the reasons why I think it's needed for ministers is, number one, ministers typically, I'm just talking across the board, don't have a lot of advantage in terms of time off, in terms of finance, in terms of these kind of things. And so whereas other professions, you may be able to have that more, stereotype is ministry doesn't. And one of the things, about ministry in particular is I've been at multiple events where ministers were supposed to be there for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and they get a call. Somebody died in their church. It's done for them. Yeah, their vacation's over, their retreat's over, their whatever's over. That's almost common. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think for ministers in particular, the rate of burnout is really high, because I think it's 2 fundamental reasons, and one I think is more of the issue than the other. But the first one would be just you at a moment's notice will be called into somebody's deepest darkness. And the challenge with ministry versus counseling is that with counseling, what you would say is, I hear your problem. I'm going to schedule a 45-minute block in 3 days. Then I'll meet with you for 45 minutes, give you the tools that I can, and then I'll meet with you the next week or in 2 weeks. And I'm not saying every counselor works like that, but that's the stereotype of counseling. With ministry, you kind of jump in, and it is hard to figure out where to step off. Mm-hmm. And then between times, you might get called 5 times and this kind of thing. So it's instantly all-consuming. I have been called on multiple birthdays because somebody died, and all of a sudden my day's done because I need to go out and be at the hospital with this family. I've been called in terms of local vacation and stuff like that. I've had stuff shorted. Heck, the guy that took a sabbatical before me on staff, he was there for 4 weeks, and our church building burned down. So that was over for him. So,
man, what's going to happen this time?
I know. I'm like, what more could happen to us?
Going to need to put a fire extinguisher in every single room of the new building.
Right. So it's one of those things that it's just that you get called into deep pain quickly with no preparation. The other thing is you're always on call, and this really has to do with, are you able to set boundaries or not? I am not. I'm naturally not good at boundaries. So the more you have struggles with saying no to things, and the worse it is. And my congregation is very gentle relative to many congregations I've experienced and heard of. But still, I feel like there's always something hanging over my head that, okay, this is my day off unless somebody calls me. And maybe I can buy some time, but depending on the magnitude of the issue, it's just what it is, and I would want to be there. Yeah. Matter of fact, in some cases, I would not want anybody else to be there because of my connection with the family or this situation. So sabbatical for what I'm doing, it's like do the opposite of that. I mean, so I'm not prepping lessons. I'm not doing Bible study. I'm not going on service projects or things like that.
Not recording podcasts.
I'm not recording podcasts. Basically just about anything that had to do with my work, I'm not doing that. And then saying, okay, what is it I need? Rest. I need growth in a variety of areas. We can talk about that if you'd want. And then I'm needing disconnect. I think I'm going to go through a grief process where it'll be, 2 weeks from now, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're doing. I'm going to call. No, I'm not. And I'll have kind of I need to get over the idea that this church is dependent on me, which conceptually I get, but functionally I don't think I do.
So on the one hand, I like the analogy of like, you said something of where it's hard for ministers to know where to step off. And I think you mentioned, I think this is the case for lots of people, but in your specific context, it's almost like you're on a train and you're trying to figure out, when do I step off the platform? And it's helpful, one, for you that you are intentionally not allowed to get back on the train. You're not allowed to, it's a forceful step off. It's also a forceful step off from the driving force of how you view your life. So you view your life primarily, almost certainly through the lenses of how you do ministry and how you see things. It's all intertwined. It's all intertwined with your relationship with God and your spouse. And that's one of the really hard parts about church work. It's also one of the ways it's supposed to be. But it's all intertwined and it's all together. And your view of yourself is tied to how well the church is doing or how other people perceive it or how you perceive it. And so there's all these really hard things that you are tangled up in terms of how you view the church, of your role in the church, of your role in these people's lives that you love. And just being human is to assume either you have absolutely no impact on it or you have an outsized impact on it. And one of the ways that you get to step off in this moment is you get to step off from those tangled, you get to step away from the tangled mess and from the idea that the center is around you, because that's how most of us construct our life. And so that's a really interesting framing. I feel like that helps me conceptualize what this time would be. So I think you touched on it a little bit, but I want to ask you a two-sided question. And it's pretty basic. What are you most looking forward to, and then what are you least looking forward to over the coming months?
What I'm most looking forward to is I don't know who I am without this job. I've been in some form of professional ministry since I was 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And most of it I love. I like to think I'm not so enmeshed in my job that it's overtaken who I actually am, but you don't know until you know. And so I am looking forward to that, acknowledging it's probably also what I'm least looking forward to. Yeah. Because then I don't know, and I have confidence this is God's space. I mean, that's probably what I'm most looking forward to, is what will God show me? I'm really anticipating that, and I've selected some activities that will push on that, push on my blind spots, push on the things that I know I need to change, but I just don't have the time, or the gumption. And now I feel like, hey, this is your time,
Or the distraction.
Yeah. Or the distract. Yeah, I know. I'll get into this 20 minutes and I'll get another call, so what's the point? I'm sure I do a lot of that thinking. So I am most looking forward to just being. And, part of that will be vacation with my family. Part of it will be some travel. And part of it will be just trying to form good life practice for me. So I love the Word of God. I genuinely do. I read it for me very little. And it's not that I don't try. I start reading it for me, but it quickly becomes, oh, we need to teach this. How does this show up? I notice this lacking in my circles or my congregation or wherever. And it quickly becomes a lesson, not for them. It really is for us. I'm like, most of what I preach, I'm like, this is what is breaking my back the most right now. So let's all talk about it. Like I've said from the pulpit multiple times, hey, this is my therapy. You just get to hear it, mm-hmm. and I believe that, but it's, I can't not think about my church. Everything I see, everything I experience, it's automatically shelving into categories about what this person needs, or this is a better illustration than I used before, or whatever. I can't even watch a movie without I saw Doctor Strange, which the applications there are hard to find, I would think. And yet it's like it's just one of those dynamics. And by the multiverse movie, not the original. I'm current. But it's that idea. I'm noticing aspects, and I'm like, I see that in the way we do church. I see that as a negative of how I interact with people sometimes. I mean, this is so deeply wired into me. And I think anybody that feels like, man, I have a calling, and they find a place that's even remotely healthy, they get to this place. So I'm paying the price for being part of a healthy church. Yeah. Whereas I have friends that they probably need a sabbatical for different reasons because they are worn down by their church. And sadly, I know more ministers in that state than in the other. But I think that's, in terms of what I'm looking forward to, is I think God's going to show me some stuff, and I'm excited about that. On the flip side, there's two dynamics. I don't know if I know how to do relationships in this circle without church. Like I've had, like, people have said, now, will we still get together? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't think much about what this is about until I'm forced to. And even with, I am best friends with people on my staff, on not my staff, but the staff I'm part of. And it's like, can we get together? And you just be you and I just be me? And so I don't know. And by that, it's not anti-God. It's how much is our relationship reliant on talking.
You're inviting these other people into a sabbatical from what their personhood is in the context of your relationship.
Right.
And that's really hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard. That takes a lot of intentionality from both parties. Real quick, if you just want to kind of give a quick overview of different things you're going to do at some point during your time.
Yeah, I'm going to take some time to vacation with my family. I'm doing a 3-weekend dynamic called Breakthrough. That is, it's an aspect of working on it provides safety and honesty and grace, and they help you process through different things. And then I'm doing a week-long intensive that involves silence and journaling and counseling, and it's one of these things where you just dive deep and you're identifying stuff. And then I'm doing a couple weeks of travel, visiting some family I don't get to see often, and then this is probably the toughest part, is forming good practice at my home. I would hope that I take back good practice when I enter back into my non-sabbatical life. That I'll have enough time where it can become habitual. So there is part of me that I'm like, okay, I'm going to binge every show I haven't been able to watch for the last 3 years, get those things done. And there may be a part of that. I'm going to give myself freedom to do what I need to do.
Absolutely.
But I know that I'll hit a point of deep restlessness if that's my diet. And I have a tendency to go there. I am a path of least resistance guy if no one is asking me for stuff. And so, of course, I'll still be part of my family units and those dynamics. I'm not leaving my wife and kids. But
hey, Jason, when you do the dishes, sorry, I do that all the time. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm no longer going to the restroom in the house. So yeah, this could go really dark. So obviously I'm going to have those dynamics. But honestly, in my life, it's a funny thing. Like I do our family's laundry, well, my wife and my laundry, And so, and I don't know if there's 1,000 men that do that, 100% of men, I don't know. But the reason I like it is it's therapeutic to me because it's one of the few things I can do once a week and I get it done. Mm-hmm. And I'm done. Whereas most of everything else in my life, I start it, I don't know how it's going to go, I don't see the fruit for 12 years, you know what I mean? And so those kind of things up to this point have been therapy of a sort, Mm-hmm. And so it will be interesting. But that's probably the time I'm most concerned with is the downtime. I'm not afraid of it, but I don't have an enormous confidence I'll use it well. And that's what I want to do. And so I've tried to front end a lot of my work that will help me then be able to practice.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think you had told me that somebody had given you the advice of like, hey, take some time to do just that, to binge TV shows, just to take, like, if that's all you do, that can be restful and that can be helpful and that can be healing in a lot of ways. And I would just say, I hope our listeners would echo. I'm really excited to see what God does. See what God does in your life. I'm excited to see what new TV show recommendations you have. And I'm excited. No, I mean, genuinely, I'm really excited. You said something at the beginning that I want to echo here. I think the practice of Sabbath and the practice of sabbatical is a beautiful practice. And man, I really wish all of us could experience it. Because I've seen the way that you have approached just life in the past few weeks as like your sabbaticals approached. One, there's kind of been a goof off into like end of school sort of feeling, but there's also, I've just seen a lot of peace and a lot of anticipation. And I would love if the church could be able to provide that, not just for their staff members, but for their accountants in the pews, or the teachers, or the stay-at-home parents. This is such an, I think I've seen it happen to other people, and I anticipate it happening with Jason. It's such a rich experience that is so fruitful. And I just go, man, what would it look like if the church was like, hey, we're going to create so much space. We're going to create space for this, for as many people as possible, because it hasn't even started for you yet, and yet I still see so much of the fruit of the anticipation for it, and the and just the readiness for what God has. So I guess my final, I don't know if it's a question or just a thought or a pondering. 6 months from now, there's all these crazy experiences. You're back in the thick of things, and you're probably the only one who thinks about, I had that sabbatical, a few months ago. This is going to sound weird, but how do you want to be? How do you want this experience to have shaped you, to have helped you, to inform you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I think we can all relate to the dynamic of, it's quite a different dynamic of thinking about how something will be and then actually experiencing it. In some ways, I'm getting this huge privilege. I've been at my church for nearly 20 years, and so they give us 8 weeks every 10 years, but they didn't start that till a few years ago. So now I have this more extended time period that they're giving me, but I'll never have that again until I retire. And as a minister, I don't intend on retiring. I'll keep doing this as long as I can. So it's so unique, and there is some fear around that. Like when you say 6 months from now, I feel a little bit of fear. Like, what if nothing changes? What if I can't produce anything? What if I look back and I squander it? So my fear kind of races when I think about that. But in relation directly to your question, I want to be 100% convinced that I don't run this place. I want to be 100% convinced I think this, but I haven't had the experience of extracting myself. Even before I moved here, I started working here because I commuted from Texas, for about 6 months. And so by the time I got here, I was deep in. I didn't have a time where I was just kind of figuring out who am I in Tulsa. I didn't know me in Tulsa, but I knew me at Memorial, And so it's been, even in that way, there's a bit of a unique dynamic of I don't have a lot of friends. I don't have any friends that aren't Memorial related in some way. And so any local friends, and that's beautiful. How many people have that? How many ministers have genuine friends in their congregation? I hear this all the time from ministers. It's so hard to form relationships. Simultaneously, I don't know what life feels like without this hanging over my head. And I mean that in a good and bad way. So I hope to come back fully convinced that this is God's work. I have a role. It's what it is. It's not too big and it's not too small. It's just what it is. And to feel peace, because that ultimately, I think, pushes me when I recognize, this isn't healthy for me to keep going. But I think, well, what happens to this place if I don't? Now, when I say that out loud, it's like, ugh. That's gross. Because that means it's Jason's church. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not Jason's church. It's Jesus' church. I just play a role here. So I think, and alongside that, practices that reinforce it. I really building in some practices. I've always struggled with, if you're not asking me to do it, if it's just me asking me to do it, I ain't getting it done. I'll just keep putting it off. But now I have space to learn, how is it I can set goals for me and follow through. Now, if I set a goal for us, I can do it. Well, sometimes. You remember that when we started reading that Bonhoeffer book? I still haven't finished that book. You finished it twice, I think.
I don't think so. I think I listened to about 3/4 of it. But,
I got you. Well, you gave up on me when I was only 4 chapters in after months.
I appreciated that we kept along with the Mirage for much longer. But I do want to make sure, like, I think if not to say it all, like, if that's all you accomplish, because like that would be a massive thing to accomplish. But like, the point of a sabbatical, the point is not to produce. It's that you are going to be withdrawing yourself, resting in who God is, and what He says about you, and trusting in Him, and that will naturally produce more fruit. And I loved what you said about finding practices to help you reinforce the idea that the place doesn't revolve around you. It's very similar, and it touched on so many things we've talked about in this podcast, but it's, faith without works is dead. We can say we believe that I'm not the center of this thing, but if the practices all say that if I'm not here, then if the gravity of my if everything's orbiting around me, everything I do is trying to make sure everything orbits around me, then do I really have faith in what I'm saying I do? And so I think that's big, and I think that's massive, and I'm excited for the things that none of us could have conceived of, and I'm genuinely excited for you for just for the rest of being able to look forward. You're at the time of recording, in a couple of days, you'll be officially on sabbatical. And just that ability to go, like, just take a breath and be like, I have these months in front of me. And there's going to be a lot of hard work, and there's going to be a lot of downtime. But just that breath you'll be able to take of that lack of responsibility sounds so childish, but just that weight being lifted off your shoulders forcibly in some ways. I'm excited for you to be able to experience that, because I think that is the natural way. I think that's one of the things that draws us so much to God, is that when we fully trust in Him, man, He takes so much of the pressures that we have put on our shoulders. He takes those away. And I think one of the beautiful things about the physical practices that you're going to get to do, and just the feelings you're going to experience, is you're going to have that. You're going to have that in every aspect of your life. And the challenge is going to be, you're going to want to put other things on your shoulders. You're going to want to do this or that with the things you learn. But still, I'm excited for it. So our hope, Jason's going to go through this, and maybe he gets radically changed, and he goes off to, he becomes like a Shane Claiborne sort of guy, and becomes a farmer, and lives in a commune, and that's how maybe he got changed in that way. I don't know what God's plan is for Jason, but in theory, if nothing radically different changes, our anticipation is to come back and keep recording Amazed and Perplexed, if that's what we want to do, and if that's what anybody's interested in listening to. That would be our anticipation. So that'd be sometime starting in the fall, if that were to be the case. For you guys, I want to say 5 episodes banked. And so I'll probably be releasing those at the beginning of every month, one each month, and then there'll be a bonus episode somewhere in between. So you won't be completely without Amazed and Perplexed, but it will not be every single week.
Yeah, I want to say, man, what a blessing you are, Connor. I appreciate so much your spirit of wanting, like, Amazed and Perplexed are words we put on kind of the way we do life. Mm-hmm. and I love that, even that you would have the interest, hey, let's do this, because it helps me process. And then I have deep gratitude for whoever gains from this, and I have deep gratitude for God and the way He uses it. And so in the unexpected chance that these are our last episodes, I am just super grateful for this experience. I will call back to the first episodes where I said, there was one point you were saying we should record our conversations, and I'm like, for what? So I still wonder, but I am grateful, because this has been, and I believe will continue to be, such a rich experience of learning for me, that I'm just really grateful. I mean, this is one of those things that to be honest, I don't think I would have to give this up. It's a practice to give it up for now as an effort of the sabbatical, but this isn't life-taking. It's purely, almost solely life-giving. So just grateful for the whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Man, I hadn't even thought about, like, if this was the last thing that goes out there, what do I say? I don't have anything. I don't have anything. Well, what a letdown for me. What a letdown for everybody. You had a nice heartfelt thing to say.
That's right.
And I had nothing. And that feels pretty in line with what this is and what this is about. So, thank you for listening to this episode. And again, in the next couple weeks, you'll get another episode, and subsequently after that. And so keep checking. You'll find something there. And we'll just, keep you updated. If Jason is on a commune somewhere come September, I'll jump on. You'll hear my voice again. I'll let you know. And I'll decry the idea of sabbatical and what a terrible, terrible idea. No, I'm just kidding. So grace, peace, and love.